Okay, so I'm just going to go through some Zoom already, just in case though. Um, so this, we're going to go through basically a presentation in PowerPoint. I am going to ask you guys questions. There is some interactive stuff we're going to be doing and exercises. I'd love to see your face if possible. I mean, it helps if I can see you and you're on camera, that's great. If you're in a place where that's not feasible, I get that as well, although I'd love for you to be able to interact. There is a chat box, so I will be checking that periodically as we go. And then you can also save the chat at the end if you want. If people share information or resources that you want to save, there's an option down at the bottom. You should see 3 dots that say more, and you can actually save. You should be able to save your chat. And once we start having a chat in there, Cheryl, once everybody logs on, will also put the handouts and the files. She'll upload them in the chat box. You guys should have received them. If you pre-registered, you would have received the 2 handouts that we're using today in your email from Cheryl this morning. So if you don't have that and you want to type in, Cheryl will upload the file, but you could also type in your email and she can send that to you and make sure that you have it. So that's practice with the chat box. So she just uploaded it. She'll do that periodically because if some people log on after, they won't see it. I am going to also, you have at the bottom left of your screen, you can mute yourself or unmute yourself. You can also do that by pressing the space bar. I'm going to ask that you remain muted unless you're going to talk, and then of course you can talk and share and then just go back on mute. That way we minimize background noise. And then you also have the video option to start and stop your video in the lower left. So any questions? And then if you go away from your screen or you want to take a little break, we're probably not going to put a break in the course. It's going to be 2 hours. So if you do need to take a break or step away, just go ahead and maybe take yourself off the video if you're on video for that time. And you can also use, there are, these cool little things that you can do if you bring up the participants. You can actually raise your hand. There's a more, you can do like a thumbs up, and you can do a little applause, which you can also use your reactions button on the bottom right. Sometimes I don't see the hands raised, so I'll check periodically. But you can feel free to talk or jump in or just put something in the chat box. I'm more likely to see that. And does anybody have any questions before we get started? I know we have a lot more people that are going to be logging on, according to the RSVP list. So we'll just kind of let them join in. We are recording this, so we can make the video available to people afterwards. I know there's some people that wanted to attend that have conflicts with other trainings right now. So we did our best to accommodate as many people as possible. And it was kind of short notice that I decided to do this, given, there was an agent that was attacked in Virginia last week. And so it was really time to just bring this conversation up again, and pretty passionate about it, as is my husband, who will actually be on this call in a little bit. He's going to join us and share some of the self-defense stuff with you that he created, that sheet, which was one of your handouts. And the other thing is, normally a course that we've done before, I've done a series of courses with the content that we're going to cover today, which I've minimized into 2 hours. There is another part to it, which is actually practical, kind of hands-on tactics and self-defense training. Obviously, we cannot do that via Zoom. Maybe there's a way to do it. It's a little weird. You guys would have to have a partner there, and we'd have to show you things. So I will say, in the future, those of you who are on Maui can certainly come to a practical training, or if you're on another island that I go to, or if you're in a different community, I would encourage you to maybe have somebody who teaches like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or maybe is a military trainer or something like that can come and show some self-defense things, because I think that's part of it, is to be able to just learn some basic self-defense in addition to the stuff that we're going to cover today. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. By the way, any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Again, just checking before we start. Okay, everybody can hear me okay? We're all good. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to go through the PowerPoint this way with you. And I want you to have your handout up. And the first handout that we're going to be going through, and I'm just going to move you guys over here so I can see you. The first handout that we're going to be looking at is the Safety by Choice, Not by Chance handout. And so you should have received this one. And we're going to go through most of the content. And what I did is I just gave you guys the whole book because there's a lot of good stuff in there. And this is its own training class, which is usually 2 hours. And so I am covering the majority of the stuff in this book. And then I'm also going to add in some things that we're going to do later today. So if you've taken this class, has anybody done this particular course, the Safety by Choice, Not by Chance course that's on the call right now in the past? Just curious if anybody's gone through this training. Okay, so that's good because it's really good. So, all right, so part one is we're gonna go through Safety by Choice, Not by Chance. And then we're gonna also talk about practical self-defense for real estate professionals, which is going to be your other handout. And then part two, as I mentioned, kind of TBD, would be the hand-to-hand defensive tactics training. And then you can follow along. So at the bottom of the slides, you'll see their page numbers. So we're gonna kind of skip ahead and go to your page number 3, and also just kind of talk about well, let's look at your page 2, which is what you will take away from this course. So we're going to talk about recommended safety protocol. We're going to recognize basic safety procedures during appointments, showings, and open houses. Talk about red flags and how to react to those. Safety practices while inside the office. There is a sexual harassment section of this course. We'll have to see how we do on time. It's towards the end. If we have time, we will cover that. In any case, it's in your book. So I would encourage you to look at that. And then also, those of you who are with Keller Williams, or whether you're with Keller Williams or another brokerage, you have your market center, your office should have safety policies. And if they don't, or if it's not extensive, then you can be a part of putting those things in place, which I think is really important, and that's one of the reasons this course was created. And then we'll identify tools and resources that will help keep you safe. So let's look at page 3, inside the office versus outside of the office. So think about the tasks that you perform daily inside and outside of the office, and which duties would you say make you feel most vulnerable? I mean, the first question I have for you guys is, how many of you who are in this course right now have at some point feared for your safety while doing your job? How many? Okay. So I saw Dylan. See, I can't see some of your hands, but you guys could put in the chat box. So let me just open the chat box. I'm just going to keep the chat box down here so we can see that. By the way, can you guys see the slides okay? See the slide? Let me know if you can't see it. Okay, I have, ditto. Okay, so yeah, some of you have, and you know, it's not super uncommon. One of the surveys that I saw that was an older survey said 1 out of, I think it's 4 out of every 10 agents have had a situation where they felt unsafe. And then some people, you know, some of the NAR study was like 70%, and it was male and female. I mean, it was, you know, everybody. So go ahead and take a minute and just jot down, if you have this printed, and I would love for you to share in the chat box or maybe mention this. I would like for you to think about what you do that has possibly made you feel unsafe, whether it's inside of the office or outside of the office. So kind of use the sheet and jot down a few things and maybe share in the chat box as well. So what would be something inside the office where you might feel unsafe that you're doing? Open houses, at open houses, don't do them anymore. Okay, yep. Some people definitely, so that would be outside of the office. Michelle says different types of safety, emotional, physical, and mental safety are all important. Yeah, so that's really it's any type of safety. So what's something inside the office you might be doing where you might feel unsafe? Does anybody work? Okay, so Jessica says meeting a potential client for the first time, working alone at the office. Yep. At night. So those are some of the things that you guys we'll probably be jotting down. So what I want you to do is just have a little list of these things and then keep these things in mind as we go through. So Dylan said late night at the office, as we go through the course. And then at the end, with all the content that you're getting, we're going to talk about what changes maybe you can make so that you could feel a little bit safer and working in the office. Okay, so this is the one study I mentioned where it said 4 in 10 real estate professionals have feared for their own safety in the past. So on page 4, it mentions safety is not a reaction to situations. It is a mindset. So yes, it is important what you do. However, the initial part of that, situational awareness, the things that you do to be proactive are really important. So be alert to potential dangers, trust your instincts, and put safety first. There was a great book that I read that I've mentioned before on a training when it talks about trusting your instincts called The Gift of Fear. It's an older book. I think I read it when I was in high school. Somebody gave it to me. And it talked about, our natural reactions and what happens chemically in the body and basically what instincts are and how fear works and how you can use it to help you determine where there's potential danger. So that's a good book if you're looking for one. It's called The Gift of Fear. And your life is more important than a transaction, right? I think we all can agree that, although we get busy and we want to service clients and we look at, earning a living and our careers, we really have to know what's most important, right? So this just talks a little bit about market center requirements. Every office, no matter what the office is, probably you want to have a safety committee or somebody who is in charge of assuring that this is a constant conversation, that it's not just a one-off of a training, that it's something that you're actually implementing and paying attention to and discussing and talking about, whether it's a written policy supported by a committee that's reminding people at your meetings about it or talking about those things so that it's constantly in front of you. It should be composed of agents from within the office that have a strong passion and desire for an agent's safety in the marketplace. And if there's a chairperson of this committee, which this is the recommended way to do it, that it would be somebody, if you're Keller Williams office, that they're on the associate leadership council or the agent leadership council or committee. Associate Leadership Committee or Agent Leadership Council member. And then a safety class being offered within the office, something like this, at least annually, if not more frequently. So if you're in another office, that's something that you're going to want to bring up to your office. And at the end of your booklet, there's some really cool sheets in there. One of them is like my safety strategies, which we'll see at the very end. That's also at the end of the chapters in here where you can note practices that you guys want to implement for yourself. So we'll go through those as well. Okay, next is, so page 8, now I'm on page 8 of your handout. This is defining danger. So let's go ahead and I'm going to read this so that you guys can kind of look at this scenario, and part of it is being able to analyze things and figure out what might make this a safer experience for the agent. So on page 8, you can follow along with me. It says, Alice, agent, was on her way home after a full day of showings when she realized that she forgot a stack of MLS printouts at the office. To avoid going in the morning before her appointment, she decided to swing by the office and grab them. She pulled up in the parking lot and parked, taking her flashlight since the parking lot was dark. It was clear that no one was at the office as the shades were drawn and the lights were off. She used the key to unlock the office door, fumbled around for the light switch on the wall. She only turned the hallway light on since she was just quickly grabbing something. She ran into her dark office, saw the stack of papers she was looking for, and grabbed them. She turned the hallway light off on her way back out of the office, locked the door behind her, and got back in her car. By the way, has anybody done this on this call? Okay, probably. So based on what Alice agent did, what would have made her quick trip to the office a safer experience? So tell me what some of your thoughts are. Either unmute yourself by pushing your space bar or unmuting in the bottom left of your screen, or you can use the chat box. Tell me what are some of the things she could have done better to be safer, or that the office could have done better to make it safer for the agent coming after hours. Any ideas?
They could have security cameras.
The office could have security cameras. Yep, that would help in terms of that feeling of safety or deterring somebody. What else?
In real time.
Yep. Laura said, oh, let me just get a couple people. So did she lock the door behind her when she came in? Okay, great. So locking the front door, you go into the office, you lock the front door so that nobody else comes in when you're there. Great. That the 2 people said that, 3 people said that. Okay, awesome. What else? What else do you see in there?
Jessica said buddy system, which was good.
Buddy system, having somebody there with you, or what do you mean, just like on the phone, or letting them know you're there? All of the above? All of the above. Okay, great. What about, so it mentioned that well, one is the office could also have a light on that they just leave on, right? Maybe there's a light that's always on in the office, or it talked about the shades being drawn. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, because theoretically, if shades are open and lights are on and people can see into the space, they're less likely, right? It's a deterrent. The locking the door after entering, you guys mentioned, which is great. And the parking lot. I mean, the parking lot being dark, you can't always control that, but you could mention to somebody, if there's a dark parking lot where your office is, that maybe they could get additional lighting for that, which would help. Anything else? And maybe more than just the hallway light. It said she went into her dark office. Well, what if somebody were in there? So turning on more than just the hallway light. So making sure that things are well lit. Any other ideas you guys have? Yep, well-lit parking lot for the office. She could also have something with her. It didn't mention anything, but perhaps she has her flashlight, which if it's the right kind of flashlight, and Ermin will talk about this later, about the flashlight and how that could be really, really a helpful tool for you guys. But if that flashlight was also potentially a weapon, that might make a difference too. Or
the other thing is, you know, carry pepper spray or a weapon. But a lot of people don't know this, but on your smartphones, there's an alarm that you can hit, and it makes a really loud noise, like whoop, 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 whoop.
Yep, that's great. Good point. So sound and noise, we'll talk about that too a little bit more later. Ermin saying quick surveillance of parking area before unlocking the car and walking in. So when you pull up to the parking lot, looking and seeing, is there anybody around? You know, is there another car right next to me? Any potential dangers that way. So we'll talk more about that. Good job, you guys.
There's been a lot of carjackings in Kona lately. And actually Tuesday, when we went for our group meeting, there was a homeless guy sitting on the stairs with his phone plugged in, you know, with a pizza box just hanging out. And I was like, okay, why isn't somebody telling him to get the heck out of here?
So that's a good point, Carol Ann, is that awareness of people around, or, you know, and what you do about it. So thank you for bringing that up. That's good. Okay, page 9, communication. So it says, you know, it's essential when it comes to your safety, and whether you're in the office or you need to just grab something, letting somebody know that you'll be there, which Jessica mentioned. So number 1 is let someone know that you're at the office and when you expect to leave, right? And then let them know when you actually leave. So if you say, hey, I'm going to let you know when I leave the office, or I'm heading home, and they don't hear from you, you know, that could be an issue, right? They would be aware of that. So who might you call or text? That could be a coworker, it could be you know, another agent, it could be a friend, it could be a family member. And maybe there's safety hotlines, which it mentions in here. That is an option. Simple text or call, it helps give you peace of mind that somebody knows where you are, right? And we'll talk about that when you're talking about being out of the office and open houses, or you're going to show a property somewhere. That's really important too. If nobody knows where you are, nobody knows where they're gonna be able to find you, or that you were supposed to be somewhere else. So we'll talk more about that later. Page 10, building security. So keys and security badges. There are a few things to consider when it comes to staying safe. Never open the door to anyone you don't know after hours. So the idea of coming in, locking the door, which requires somebody to knock on the door and a conversation through the door, is good. And then you can call the police if someone appears to have an emergency situation, because sometimes, you know, just be aware of that too, that if there seems to be an emergency situation or something that would need police attention, or you're concerned about something, you can call them. It says place bells or a ringer on the main doors as a means of notification when somebody walks in. So if you are sitting somewhere by yourself and the door is unlocked, you know, have something that gives you an identification of sound if somebody comes in. And some offices, yeah, go ahead.
The thing that we have in my building where I am, I really like my office, we've got security cameras and there's roaming security, but you've got a homeless problem where they hang out, and the police told my friend who owns the building to post no trespassing signs, because if there's somebody there and you don't have no trespassing signs posted, the cops cannot do anything and arrest them. Once you have the no trespassing signs up, if you call the police, they can be arrested for trespassing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So no trespassing signs is great. Thank you for that, Carol Ann. Jessica said there should also be accountability with the other person if you haven't heard by them from a certain time follow-up. So if you're the person that is supposed to hear from somebody because you're helping somebody with this, that you reach back out to them. Some places also have keys. You have keys, a lockbox, like offices. You might have a code, a door, or a security badge. So let's look at potential security issues if, you know, in this case, to access your office and determine what precautions you should take for each one. So, you know, at the bottom it says length of time needed. So say the security issue is the length of time needed to unlock or lock doors. I mean, in some cases, right, you have a lock box, which we'll talk about being outside of the office too. I mean, it takes a minute. You got to go and you put the code in and you know, take the key out if it's a key box, and then you got to put the key in the door. So what are, you know, what's a necessary precaution for that based on that's a potential security issue? One, being aware, right? So if it's going to take me a minute, I need to look around me, and while I'm opening the lockbox or whatever it is, if it's going to take time, I need to be aware that I need to be paying attention until I get in the door and close it. There may be ways to shorten that depending on what kind of system you have, where if it's a key code entry and it just pops the door open, if it's an automated one that you can have a sensor where you actually just wave the sensor, like that's one of the reasons a lot of apartment buildings have that sensor where you just have a sensor tag, wave it, opens the door right away. That's fast. Another one is door may not close all the way behind you or lock behind you. So just being aware of that. If you lose your keys or somebody steal, you know, or your badge, somebody can now get into your office. So you have to be aware of that. And also access may be restricted to certain hours. So those are all things just to consider and think about the necessary precautions to take, whether it's, you know, you're an agent in your office or you're a manager in your office. Denise says all of our offices are on a fob system. I mean, I really think that's great. And I think that's ideal, Denise. Like the fob system is a way to go. I know some offices don't do that because you have to then get fobs for everybody. And then you do have situations where other people could potentially use it. But really, as far as the safety in terms of speed of getting in is definitely helpful. Okay, let's talk about lighting. And then let me just check the chat box. Oops, sorry, when I do that on that. Okay, I think I got all that. Okay, so lighting. So page, oh, somebody mentioned security cameras. So it does talk about that on page 11, by the way, in your booklet. So it says it doesn't prevent crime from occurring, of course, but it can monitor, right? Like again, the real-time cameras we were talking about, it could deter people, right? They might, if they're going to look at breaking into somewhere, they might look at breaking into a place that doesn't have a camera versus does, because they don't want to risk that. And then gathering evidence, if there is something that happens, it serves the purpose of that as well. Lights should be on in the office at night. Yes, definitely. We did talk about that. I think that's great. And in fact, I think we have you know what, it's not always on. We actually do have a light, one of our lights in here, but I'm gonna check on that myself for our office. Okay, so lighting, indoor lighting, you have overhead, adjustable shades, after hours lighting, maintenance lighting. So these are all things to consider when you're working inside the office, is what that situation looks like. And then you have your outdoor lighting, which is your parking lot lighting, which we talked about a little bit, and your maintenance lighting. So, and the maintenance lighting, it says that, you know, not a lot of people work after hours. I mean, in certain buildings, so sometimes they may not notice if there is adequate light at night, because if a lot of people aren't there at night, they may not be paying attention to that. So if you are there at night and you notice that the lighting situation can be improved, talk to the building maintenance person and report it. You know, that's up to you too, and that's for everybody's safety. So pay attention to those things and the lighting. So page 14 in your booklet has an office safety checklist. So this is really to help you guys and the office identify and implement safety protocols. So I'd love for you to kind of look at this checklist, which talks about indoors, things that you can do for safety, like keeping the shades open, at least slightly, the overhead lights on, report any lights that aren't working, avoid working in unlit office space alone, locking the doors, a lot of the stuff we've already talked about. Be aware if there are security cameras of which offices are monitored, work in those locations. Don't let anyone you don't know in the office, right? After hours, and even during hours maybe, but no, definitely after hours. If there's other people in the office during hours, it might be a client, so, or a potential client. And then indoors, well-lit spaces, or sorry, outdoors, park in well-lit spaces, report any parking lot lighting that's not in working order. So basically this is really just for you to be able to use as a checklist. And as we go through, the booklet's gonna kind of recap and give you some tools that you can then take to your office or implement yourself.
Lisa?
Yes, question?
Yes, I have a question. So for us new agents, or the agents that have been around but still don't know all of the other Keller Williams agents,
Yep.
how are we to verify that someone's a Keller Williams agent when they come in? Oh wait, they'll have access to the key. Never mind.
If you have the lock, yeah, like, so if it's a lockbox or a situation where, you know, you put, I mean, that's the thing, that you do want to not keep the key. That's a really good point. So if it is a lockbox situation, sometimes agents will take the key inside with them if they're there by themselves or nobody else is in the office. I suggest you do not do that because of exactly what you just said. So what you want to do is you put the key back in the lockbox, or reset whatever the security system is for the people to get in. That way they have to do it themselves to get in. Does that make sense? So they're not just knocking on the door going, let me in.
Right.
It's a good question.
Yeah, that was my concern, was like someone coming to the door saying they're a Keller Williams agent when really they're not and they mean to do harm.
Yeah. I mean, I think
have them show their license card. They're supposed to have a wallet license card.
Yeah, they can show you their card. They can verify, you know, say what their name is. You can contact somebody. But really, I think if you just let them have to go through the same process you did to get in, you're probably fine, because they would know it only if they're working there, right? Good question. So what safety strategies do you think you guys can implement immediately based on what we just covered? On your page 15, it has some safety strategies for you guys to mark down on your own. So kind of let's talk through it. So what are some of the things that you can write down that are safety strategies you can implement immediately, maybe that you weren't already doing, or that you are going to start doing? You're going to start doing, or you've been doing.
I have a flashlight in my car.
What's that?
I have a flashlight in my car at all times.
What about your car, Anna? Sorry.
To have a flashlight.
Have a flashlight.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Great. That's huge. Have a flashlight in your car. We'll talk about the type of flashlight later. So that is perfect. That's a great one. What else?
I think just awareness. I think that most people just aren't aware of their surroundings.
Absolutely, Tim. You're totally right. They're not. And we are going to talk a lot about how critical that is. And why, this is a really good thing to bring up. I mean, we'll probably talk about it later, but Tim, why do you think that people aren't really aware of their surroundings?
They just take it for granted. They never think anything's going to go wrong. So they're into their own mode and they just go.
Yep. Take it for granted. They just assume everybody's, like them and wouldn't harm them. They, people, do you think realtors get distracted by their phones? I mean, guilty. Like, you can get really distracted by if you're on a call or you're texting, and you really have to be aware. And a lot of times those kinds of distractions can really take you away from knowing what you're safe. Yeah. If you're in a situation.
I think when somebody's that you haven't met before, a potential client or wants to meet I think you have to ask more questions, and very pointed questions.
Yep. Okay, great, you guys. So Ermin, you said 1 and 2 are best answers. Do you, if you want, you can unmute yourself in the lower left of your screen or your space bar, because I didn't know which ones you meant.
Okay.
Hi. What were the best answers? Did you think?
The flashlight and the situational awareness.
Yeah.
Those two. Situational awareness comes first, actually, and that flashlight comes second. That's my highest recommended defensive tool for every single person that they can carry and use without much training. Just a little advice. Great,
thank you. Yeah, and you can definitely expand on that later too, but certainly if you want to jump in, you can.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, and the other thing, we're going to get into it more later, but right now, if you look at approaching any scenario, before you embark on whatever you intend to do, you look at it from the point of view of a criminal. Put yourself in their mind and look out and say, if I wanted to get someone between their car and this office from this parking lot, where would I park? If I want to hide on an alley on side the building, what would be a strategic advantage for me from there? And then make your approach according to being aware of the eyes of a criminal. That'll change your whole world.
That's great. Yeah. Think about the perspective. It's an extreme version. When we work with real estate, we talk about, right, we're working with a seller and then a buyer submits an offer and we're in negotiation, and we say to our seller, think about this from the perspective of the buyer, right? Do we ever say that? Put yourself in the buyer situation. So it's kind of like that, except a little bit different. It's something we're not as familiar with because we don't necessarily think like the criminal. And it's such a great point that you do have to, that it really helps you to change your perspective to be as aware as you possibly could be. And would somebody do harm to you? And then how do you avoid that, knowing that? So thank you, that's great. Any other strategies you guys have to implement? Okay, let's move on to offsite safety. So in your page, that starts on your page 1718. So communication, we talked a little bit about this before, having a safety communication, like what is the policy of the office? So that's number 1, to make sure that there is some kind of a safety communication policy, so that kind of all of the agents are aware and following. And again, it's a conversation, so that not everybody's kind of on their own. And then, do you communicate the activities to anybody outside of the office? And also, what technology do you use, which we'll talk a little bit about to stay safe. So, your phone, so Caroline mentioned the phone noise, and we're talking about flashlights, and then calendars. Some people have shared calendars, which we'll talk about, where somebody else can see their calendar so they know where they are, they know what appointment they're on if something happens. And then, do you make any special safety considerations for your social media presence and marketing materials, which would include things like privacy settings, headshots, which sometimes people talk about not wanting to use photos. It's tough because we're in the real estate business. A lot of times people identify you, especially in your local community, by who you are and what you look like, and it's a branding thing. So, there isn't really right or wrong, but they're just things to be aware of. And then your social media, you know, and nowadays people can just see where you are. Like they can literally track you, or you, if you have your address on there, or you know, you check in from home, or they can look you up in public record, and, you know, people can really get the information. So you just have to be aware of what it is you're sharing, on what platforms, and who you're sharing it with, and if that's okay with you. And if it is okay with you and people can know where you are at all times based on what you're sharing, you must think about the precautions that you need to take, just knowing that you're opening that up for somebody. If they wanted to do harm, it may put you at greater risk. I don't know, it's something to look at. Page 19 to 21 are resources for you. So here are some safety applications that people have recommended that were to this course as resources. I've looked at some of them, but not a lot of them. So this is really for you guys to look at on your own time and figure it out. Or if you've used them, I'd love to hear from anybody who has used them, or another application that works really well. So there's Safe Track. It talks about, it has a safe button. So you could have your finger on it in case you feel unsafe. And then if you don't, this company will notify the police that you have an emergency. So you can have that kind of thing ready if you feel like you're in an unsafe environment. It talks about a trust stamp to verify data. There's agent's armor. So you can, you know, emergency contacts can be notified if you're on a showing. Real alert. You can kind of look through these. Safety, My Force, React, Lifeline, Here I Am, Find My Friends. And then you have wearable devices. So there's a tag that you can wear. There's a button that clips to your clothes, or keychain, which can give your status. Some of the things also just give a noise, but they'll GPS you too. A bracelet that notifies people where you are, the people that you want to be notified and not who you don't. Stiletto charm, a rope bracelet or necklace, Nim ring, there's pendants. So does anybody currently have anything that they use that is, you know, kind of a device or a tool like this currently? Anybody on the call? Not yet, no? I'm taking that as a no. Wait, let me look at the chat.
What, like a life alert thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be more for the idea of safety in a situation where there's potential danger of like an attack, which we're talking about today. I mean, that kind of thing is like, yeah, if you need medical attention, I mean, I guess you could certainly use that too in a situation of a safety where it's not just you by yourself. But yeah, anything else just in terms of safety? Somebody mentioned like pepper spray. I've seen people have detachable keychain things in the past. Oh, somebody says, I have the Life 360 app, Jessica. Okay, so that's good. I think that was in.
A lot of it is common sense and knowing how to respond. Think, okay, what would I do? Like you have car keys. You could take your car keys and point them out through your fingers, like so the points are out. And you can jab somebody in the eye, the face, like really easy with those. So your car keys can be a weapon.
Yep.
So like if you're walking from your car to wherever, just position your keys in your hand to jam it in somebody's eye.
Yeah, if you don't have anything else, I mean, that can certainly be a weapon. We'll also talk about some other things that you can carry that are really effective. As well. So, and then Jessica says Life app has a GPS tracking, average speed traveled, and you can set up safety zones. Okay, great. Use it for my girls. Riley, will we be getting these slides? So you have the booklet, which if you don't, maybe Cheryl, if you're still on and you want to post it in the chat box, it was sent out today, Riley, too, if you registered in your email, which is this, basically I'm going through the booklet, which has the stuff that we're talking about in your booklet. In addition, it has everything that's on the slides plus. So definitely get that from Cheryl, or put your email in the, she has your email, but she can send it to you if you didn't get it.
So Lisa, I have the booklet, but I'm not seeing that like list that you just went over of all like the wearables and the apps and the.
It's there.
It's page 19 through 22 in your book.
Oh, I'm on page 18.
Okay,
Okay.
but there you go. See, we figured that out.
All
We're all
right.
good.
Thank you.
You're welcome, no problem. Okay, and I know I'm moving a little quickly, just so you know. The reason is because I want to make sure we get to the other content. As I mentioned, this is generally a 2-hour class by itself, and we have 2 hours for the whole thing. So I'm going a little fast. I definitely do want your feedback, although just know we're also moving a little quickly. Somebody's asking, where do we find the booklet? Okay, Laura. So it was posted, if you are registered for the class in advance, it was posted, I mean, it was sent to you via email. If not, put your email in the chat box, and Cheryl can send it to you, or Cheryl, if you're on, and you can just re-upload it into the chat box. Everybody who's on now will get it. So let me just see if Cheryl's on.
I'm on here, Lisa. I can do it as
You'll
well.
do it, Dylan? Thank
Yep.
you. Okay, so Dylan will upload it for you guys in there. That way you'll all have it. You can download it. Yeah, thank you for asking. Okay, so let's look at appointments. Page 23, which it says defining danger, and we have Ashley Agent. So we're gonna go through this. So Ashley Agent was contacted through Facebook Messenger by a man that said he wanted to purchase a home in the area. He specifically noted that it would be a cash purchase and that he would like to get started with his search as soon as possible. The contact was unsolicited by Ashley Agent, and Ashley Agent is sure this man was not a referral. So what do you think Ashley Agent could do or should do in this instance to protect herself? What are some of the things maybe she could do?
Well, the
Not
first
knowing.
obvious one is have a meet and greet prior in the office and,
Absolutely.
yeah, meet the person, yeah,
It
Totally.
should be policy.
in a group setting anywhere, maybe not the office, but a coffee shop, somewhere in a group setting.
In the office, I think it should be policy in the office, because especially if you've got cameras, you get to take a picture of their driver's license. It's like, you know, I think you need to step up our game and act professional.
Yeah, I know our office is closed to the public at the moment, so given the current situations, not all offices will be open.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think you're right, Tim. Yeah, Carol Ann and Tim, that's a really great suggestion. And yeah, Tim, a public place as an option too. So if it's not the office where your other people are there and you're copying their driver's license, which by the way, you can take a snapshot of their driver's license too if you're out at a coffee shop. And I think that's a great idea. A coffee shop or somewhere where you have a public meeting is really smart. What else? And any other ideas you guys have about what she could do to find out about this person? Okay, somebody says always meet in office, pre-screen all new clients. I mean, does anybody ever research people online?
Yeah,
Or is that just me?
Google their name.
Right? Yeah, you can kind of like, I mean, with the amount of information that's out there today, you know, do they have a Facebook page or an Instagram? What can you learn about them? What if you Google them? Is there any complaints? Or you can go to certain websites where you can look and see if they have any, you know, if there's any public information that's not good. Or if they don't have any information. I mean, I've gone through situations where I've researched people and you can't find anything. And that to me, I mean, I get that some people have privacy. I'm not saying that means they're bad. Although, you know, with the information that's freely available today, it might, you know, have me take a step back. Ermin says sex offenders list specifically. You can look at that. So yeah, you might just want to kind of do some homework on that person and see what you can find out. You might want to talk to other people in the office or talk to the board. I know we've had situations here on Maui where there is a criminal that starts targeting agents, or I mean, primarily what they do is they'll go, like, we've had burglaries where at open houses, like where an agent in other parts of the country, I think it's more prevalent than here, but we have had it happen where people will break into a home or they'll go into a home and they'll steal something while somebody's there at an open house. We've also had a situation where somebody has called or emailed that was requesting showings in a certain area, and they were calling multiple female agents, and the board sent out an alert to let everybody know this was happening. But one of the things you could do is if you could contact the board and say, hey, have you heard if there's somebody doing this, you know, that I should be aware of? So that's just another thing that you can do. Any other ideas?
Well, if you do have to meet the person, you can just bring somebody with you.
Yep, totally can bring somebody with you. Yep, totally, great idea.
What I used to do whenever I would schedule a showing appointment, or if I was doing an open house, I would always confirm it, or when I was confirming with the person for the showing appointment, would verify the place, the time, their name, and I always copied my broker on it. My broker and I, Pam and I, had a really good system.
I think that's great, Carol Ann. And to take that a step further, you let the person know that as well, right? Because the criminal, if it is a criminal that wants to do harm.
They see that somebody else is copied on the
Yep,
email.
yeah. So you copy them, they see that, so they know somebody else is in the loop. There you go. That's a deterrent, right? Or you let them know when you see them, okay, this is our office policy. I'm gonna take a picture. I send it to my office. That way we have it on file. So those are all really, really good ideas. So continuing on with that, page 24, it does talk about asking for the photo ID. And, you know, you may be an agent that is uncomfortable asking for that, or feels weird about it, or isn't sure how to bring it up. So there's actually a couple great scripts in here, just a couple easy scripts to how to ask for that ID. So obviously if it's our policy, that's great, right? Because then you're going to do it. You can blame it on the broker. We need a copy of your ID with the customer identification form, or every time we do a buyer consultation or whatever that is, I'll be right back to you with a copy. And then, oh, before we go, let me take a quick picture of your photo ID with my phone and send it to the office for our records. Like, that's easy, right? We all can kind of do that. So it's a good idea. It's a good practice. Page 25, neutral territory. Again, continuation of what we've been talking about, meeting at the office, access to the copier, access to your files, and of course you have witnesses. And if you have an appointment with someone that doesn't want to meet in neutral, what they're calling neutral territory, so at the bottom of page 25, again, it's our policy, right? So it's our policy to meet all clients at our office or a coffee shop, just what you guys said. For our first meeting, it'll give us a chance to complete some paperwork and get to know each other before we start working together. And I think, and anybody who says, by the way, if somebody says, no, I don't want to do that, just go meet me at the property, is that a red flag?
Just tell them to find somebody else.
Right. It's a red flag for sure. Now, they still may not be a criminal or wanting to do your home, but it isn't unreasonable for you to then feel unsafe or have a concern about your safety.
And
okay.
On that specifically, everyone should be very familiar with how a sociopath operates. I would suggest everybody just look up a YouTube video on it or anything. Look up some files on it. It's very simple, short research you can do. And when you start asking questions like that, the sociopath will have real specific ways of turning it around against you. They have so many methods of getting their way and still seeming to be innocent or charming. So just be aware of that. When you start asking questions that they don't agree with, be aware of how they answer. And a sociopath will always react in a very familiar way. So look after.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, they may not seem weird because they can relate, but still be aware. Okay.
They've been doing it their whole life. They're very good at it.
Okay.
Convincing. Yep.
Scary. So Ermin is here in this class today to freak us out so that we do something about our safety. And he will even do more of that later. That's why he's in my life. Okay. So
self-qualities in those videos too.
The what, Keone?
You might see some self-qualities in those videos.
Yeah, you're like, am I a sociopath? No, I'm just kidding.
Realtors can be sociopaths too.
Okay, page 26. So let's do this little exercise together on page 26. It says review each potential meeting place to determine whether that location is neutral or not, and put an X in the appropriate column, or we'll just talk it through. So is a coffee shop neutral or not neutral?
Neutral.
It's neutral, right? We just talked about it. What about a client's house?
Oh, not neutral.
Not neutral. Your office?
Neutral.
Neutral. A vacant property?
Not neutral.
Right. Restaurant?
Neutral.
Your own house?
Trouble.
Your own house, not neutral, and hopefully none of you are inviting clients to your house because that's probably not a good
Not
idea.
a good idea.
Just in general, not a good idea. Okay. And then after hours at your office. So we said your office was neutral. However, what I like about this sheet is it also says after hours at your office. And in that case, it's saying it's not neutral, right? Because there aren't other people around. The doors aren't open. It's you know, there's a higher level of risk. Okay, so page 27 talks about using a customer identification form. So you may or may not be doing this now. And this is something for you that you might want to start to implement as a practice, is having somebody fill out, having every potential customer that you're going to be working with fill out a form, even if it's just a one-sheeter, a half page of an intake. You know, I know you guys do your buyer consultations and you may be gathering information from people as you go. However, it's a really great starting point that makes sure you get the information that you need initially for safety purposes and also for other purposes, but primarily for safety purposes. So having them do a form identifies who you're working with. It helps qualify them. So if you're asking them a couple questions, it's similar to if you have an intake form, if you get a call from a buyer, it's going to probably have some of that same information. But it also aids police in the event something does happen to you, right? Like you go on a showing with them, and then keep a copy of that, email it to somebody so it's not just you having it with you when you're with that person. Most clients understand why you would need the information, and you can always tell them the office policy requires it. So here's just, again, some scripting. I'd appreciate it if you fill out our customer information form. Having your information in one spot will make it easier for me to contact you with any information you need. So just having that form. And there is, by the way, a copy of one. Let's see, I think it's in the, oh, there's one on page 28, and then I think it's in your appendix of the booklet too. So as an example, page 28, you know, name, information, employer, copy of photo identification. So as a reminder of that. Where do they live, in town, out of town, their address, their car info, right? Ooh, why might their car info be important to get? That's not usually on a customer info form that you guys are doing probably in your buyer consults. Any idea why a car might be important?
Because you can track the person that way.
Yeah, I mean, what if you, now we're on an island, so we don't really think a lot about abductions, although they, you know, they can and have happened. But, you know, I mean, if you ever go in a car, which is another really safety note about not going in somebody else's car and letting them drive. So I know a lot of you may take people in your car as a buyer who's showing property, and if you're in your own car, it's still dangerous in your own car. So Ermin can maybe address that a little bit later and talk about car safety just in general. I will tell you, and honestly, I won't say it was really for safety as much as convenience, but I would, when I was showing property a lot more, I would always meet the person at the property. I would not, I mean, if I met them at the office first, great, or whatever, if I knew them, but even if not, or we have a lot of clients, right, that don't live here, I actually preferred to be alone in my car and have them drive around and talk amongst themselves about things and then just meet at the property. So anyway, think about that as far as the car, and we can talk more about that later. But at least you have that customer info form. So really just make that a practice. The next is page 29, use a public calendar. So I mentioned this earlier. So if you have a public calendar, like a Google calendar, which I love, that's my favorite. And many people, by the way, have access to my calendar, not many, but you know, like a handful. So people can always look at, I mean, who I work with, my team can look at where I am and what I'm doing. And if I'm an appointment, and you know, I may get a little bit better at putting where I'm located. Most of them are in the office. Sometimes it's not. So most of the time I put that on there, but really just put that in the calendar. What time, you know, you have your appointments, when you expect to return, it says who you're meeting with, and you can also put their contact information in there if it's like it's a client, which I don't do, so that's good for me. And then the exact location of that appointment. Okay, so that way people know where you are. Anybody does anybody do that now, have a public calendar that is shared with other people? Now, you probably have a calendar you can share though. Is that something you guys are gonna do? Does anybody like the idea of sharing their calendar? Okay, I see Terry saying yes. Okay, so now let's talk about showings. And then I just want to point out though, before we go on to page 31, on page 30, you have the appointment checklist. So this is another one of those recaps with a little checklist for you. And what's cool about these documents, by the way, these little forms, I mean, do you guys start to see that you have kind of a system too in how you work with people? Right? So it's kind of a bonus because it's not only a safety thing, but it also helps give you a system and some consistency with your clients. Lavette says she shares her calendar with Errol. That's great. Yes, question?
I have a question, Lisa. Are we going to be going over safety for open houses?
Yes,
especially in this new after COVID, whatever. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're going to be going through safety for showings, which a lot of that is going to translate to open houses, although we can specifically address, you know, open houses. Most of the stuff for showings is going to translate to open houses though. So, yes. Okay, so let's get into showing. So page 31, anybody have any additional thoughts or questions or things that they're doing from what we've just covered as far as a checklist and getting information from people that they're doing that's working, or something that's a takeaway that they're gonna implement that they're not doing now? What do you guys think?
I really like the idea of sharing my calendar with somebody. I mean, it's easy to, I always tell my husband where I'm going and what I'm doing, but if it's actually in writing and he has the same contact information on the clients that I do, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Terry. Anyone else? Okay, we'll be prepared because you're going to share takeaways later. Okay, so page 31, showings, defining danger. Here's Amy Agent again. Amy Agent took a phone call from someone who is interested in seeing a vacant property that she has listed. The caller said he wants to visit the property ASAP so he doesn't miss an opportunity to buy. Sound familiar? He noted that he got Amy's information from social media. He doesn't get off work until 7 p.m. and wanted to meet at the property at 8 p.m. that night. Now, is that uncommon? Does that happen, you guys?
Yes, I never show property after dark, never.
Okay, so Carol Ann, that's your own policy, which is great. I know that some agents do, and I would say that it's not uncommon that people will work, you know, to a certain time and then they want to look at a property at night. It's not ideal to show a property at night anyway. So, I mean, most people, you know, you could potentially avoid that if the sun is down. However, you know, 7 o'clock, the sun might still be up. Like you might be going to show property a little bit later or be done later. You might go in when the property is lit. I mean, from the outside, meaning when the sun's up, and then it goes down. So, oh, are you not seeing my slides, Terry?
No, it's just all green. I
Oh,
did the same thing.
How long has it been like that? Okay.
Just a couple seconds. It's all good.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, now it's back.
Let me fix that. Let me fix that. Hang on. Thank you for letting me know. Let's try this again. Let me know if this fixes it. All right, let me stop share and go back. How's that? Let me know. Can you see it?
Yes, now it's
Got
back.
it. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Thanks, you guys. Okay. All right. So page, so again, Amy Agent, we just talked about Amy Agent. So what should Amy Agent do to protect herself in this instance? What, do you see any red flags in the scenario? Potentially?
Sure.
Okay. Well, what's one thing we've already talked about that we just discussed that it's important to do when you're going to show the property?
Get their ID.
Okay, one to get their ID, and then you guys mentioned 2 other things that we've talked about already that I think in this scenario might be good.
Yeah,
So they're asking to meet
some
a property.
investigation.
What's that, Tim?
Go with somebody or do some investigation up front.
There you go. do some investigation, go with somebody, bring somebody with, right? If she is going to meet them at the property and not in a neutral location first, which by the way, she could request to meet them at a neutral location first, right? That's another thing. But if not, and she's going to go right to the property, bringing somebody with is an option. And I know several people that do that here in general. Say it's policy to meet at the office first, Jessica's saying. Yep. Okay, you guys, so that's just to get you to think about it. I mean, it's kind of like little quizzes, but really just to kind of practical application and scenarios that you guys are in, you know, fairly often. Okay, prior to a showing, your page 32 and 33 has a list of safety precautions, which are great. So it says safety precautions during showings don't begin once you're inside of a home. Many safety measures can be taken prior to opening the front door, which I doubt most agents really consider some of these things, right? One is using the buddy system, take somebody with you, which we talked about. Arrive early. Are you guys ever running around like chickens with your heads cut off and, you know, going from one place to the next? I mean, that's, you know, and sometimes it's the life of a realtor. So if you arrive early, and Ermin will talk more about this next, which we're almost to that section, you know, is scope out the property, turn on the lights, open the curtains, blinds before people arrive, take care of a few tasks at the property, walk the perimeter of the house, looking at the inspection of it, get you peace of mind that there's nobody that shouldn't be there or any signs of disturbance. Establish escape routes, which Ermin will talk about too. So exits, know where they are, unlock, you know, deadbolts so you make sure that you have ways to get out, determine a couple of ways to get out, let somebody know where you are, which we talked about. You can establish a code word. I know sometimes people do this where they're going to show a property and if you call, like sometimes you may call the person or you can tell somebody to give you a call at a certain time and they can call you and then there's a code word that means that it's, you know, like something's wrong or this person is, you know, I'm in danger. And then another one is park on the street. So Ermin, you're going to talk about parking, right? Are you going to talk about where they park and everything? Or should I go into that more now?
You can go into it and then I can always add on if we need to.
Okay, so this is a big one, and I have to tell you, we actually had a situation, and this wasn't their fault per se, because the guy actually blocked them in on the street and not in the driveway. This actually happened to our agents recently. We were showing a property, and somebody did block them in their car. There was because the road was, they couldn't get around in the road, but literally somebody blocked them in and was causing problems to them and harassing them. So this does happen and it's something to be aware of. So basically it indicates to park on the street or somewhere where you have a route to exit is the key. Because if you park in a driveway and you're showing a property to somebody who wants to do you harm, they can just park behind your car and block you so you can't get out, you can't leave. So just keep that in mind. And I'm sure that we don't really pay attention. I know a lot of agents don't. I mean, I know you know, a lot of times you go in the driveway or you park in a place where you can be blocked in. So just be aware of that. And depending on the property, you just have to see what's most practical. But the key is where is there somewhere you can park where no matter what you can get out, you know? And then turning on the lights. Lights are good. You know, criminals like dark better than they like light. So just make sure you have a sufficient number of lights. And you can talk about if you are showing a property at night, you know, with the listing that you have, that there's a light timer to make sure that there's going to be sufficient exterior lighting for that property that you're listing as well. Any other thoughts or questions? You want to add anything to that, Ermin?
No, I think what you said was good on the
Okay.
parking, just being aware of your escape routes.
Okay, and then we'll go through your sheet too.
Yes.
And then during the showing, so page 34, it talks about driving in separate vehicles, which I mentioned I used to do all the time, although it wasn't necessarily for safety, but it's a good idea. Always,
Lisa,
yeah,
I have
question.
a question about that.
Yeah.
What is recommended in the event that you get a quote unquote client who says that they don't have a vehicle or access to one, because I ran into that and I was just wondering what your recommendation was.
Well, it can be a red flag, Riley. I guess the reason would be why they don't. I will say that it's not uncommon. Like here where we do have a lot of, half of our business comes from off island. So we get a lot of people, it's a second home market. So they're going to be staying at a hotel, when hotels are open, they stay at a hotel and they may rent a car. Sometimes they don't, although most of the time they do. However, they often want you as the agent to drive them around because they're not familiar with the area and they want you to kind of tour guide them and ask you questions while you go. So that you can certainly still do. If you do, though, you just have to be aware. It's basically saying this is the safest that you can be, is not getting in a car with somebody else. However, you may take buyers around. So you just have to make sure you take all the necessary precautions. I mean, if they're referred, if you know them, if you've had a relationship with them, it may be better, not necessarily, but you just have to take those precautions, get to know who they are, follow the protocol, initially maybe meet them at the office, which they can Uber to if they have to, right? And determine whether they're gonna go into your car or not, because some agents won't put somebody in their car without going through certain protocol before, and you can just go ahead and do that. Like get their ID, get them to fill out the form, do the research on them, let somebody know where you're going and that you're in their car.
Thank you.
That's what I would say. So this would just be the ideal, right? And sometimes you just got to go with, the situation. Walk behind your clients. This is really big. Urban talks about this too. It's huge. I mean, this is, I think, one of the most important things is just being able to be able to see the people and have them in front of you so that you don't get in a situation where people are behind you, you're not seeing what's going on, and also where they can't trap you. So that's really important. Avoiding confined spaces. It says stay in an open space on the first floor. If your clients want to tour something else or confined space, you just stay there. Don't go ahead of them. And we tend to want to be their tour guide sometimes and go ahead of them. And I would just advise that you don't do that. Stay by the door. I've done that before when people want to go look in a confined area. I just wait there and use a safety application on your smartphone. Have an excuse ready. Oh, so the confined spaces, I know Ermin will talk more about that. And then have an excuse ready if you start to feel uncomfortable. So the idea is you want to have an exit plan in place. Like if something happens, have something already ready to figure out that you're going to say that you need to go for, or, oh, I've got to run, or, oh my gosh, I just got a text, my kid, whatever, like I've got to go pick up my kid. So just have something ready. Okay. I'm so sorry. I just got an emergency text. I've got to leave right now. Like that's really important to be able to get out if you need to get out.
Hey, Lisa.
Yes.
I have something else that I've done in the past. And basically that is like when a showing shows up, I'm on the phone and then I say, and I make sure that they know, I'm on the phone and I'll say, it could be your husband, it could be your broker, whoever. And then you basically say, oh, hi, yeah, my showing just showed up.
I love that. Love that. That is so smart. And
yeah, I'll say, oh, my showing just showed up, and then I'll call you as soon as I'm done.
I love that. You're so good. I love that. And better yet, you could even get to say the person's name. I mean, assuming that's their real name, but you could say, oh, I'm at, like my showing, Mike just showed up to 123 Sample Street, right? So now you have the address, you say the person's name, and I'll give you a call as soon as we're done and we can continue this conversation. Like, boom, that is awesome. Love that. That's great.
That will ruin their day if they're a criminal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so on page 35, you do have a showings checklist. So again, what we just talked about is in a little checklist for convenience. And these are things you could create a little booklet or a file and save. really good as a reminder when you're doing that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about open houses, which Riley did ask about, and then I'm going to let Ermin take over for a little bit. So, okay, open houses. So let's do a scenario. Does anybody else want to read this one, by the way, on page 36, the scenario? Somebody else can read it if you got your booklet in front of you. Who wants to volunteer to read?
You know, I'm wondering if we can talk about open houses in this new COVID environment. Because that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. We're not back to like open houses as normal.
Yeah, we can add a couple things in here when we talk about COVID. The safety, I mean, I guess, you know, there is a safety consideration in terms of COVID as far as exposing yourself. That is, we can add.
Because we're doing by appointment only open houses. We're not doing like sitting there, anyone walking in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, in a way it's good because you can actually control it more, right? Because with an open house, when you're sitting there, anybody can walk in and they don't call you first. So if anything, it's more safe. It may be less safe than that you have less people there at the same time because that is a deterrent. However, it's more safe if you're doing an appointment because it allows you to get the information we're talking about, right, before they come in the property. So in that regard, I think it's great. If that's helpful. So, okay, so who wants to read? Anybody else want to read this, or are you leaving it to me?
I can read it.
Okay, Lavette, let's read. Andy Agent, can you show yourself, or is that not okay? Are you like concerned about your hair or something? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Okay, and Andy Agent was holding an open house in a quiet neighborhood. While there was a lot of foot traffic earlier in the day, it slowed down considerably. As Andy Agent was starting to pack things up and get ready to go, a man stepped inside and asked if he could take a quick look around. Andy Agent welcomed him and noted that he was getting ready to close things up, but to let him know if he had any questions. After looking around, the man asked Andy Agent if he was the only one there. He then asked if Andy would walk him through the master bedroom that was at the back of the house.
Ooh, are there some red flags there? There's 5 red, like everything, every sentence was a red flag, right? So, I mean, potentially, right? It's your perspective, right? That's why it's in mindset. That's why we talked about like situational awareness, and like you may not see it as a red flag. You may just be like, oh, Andy, you know, I mean, or what's the guy's name? The guy who just came by, and oh, I'm glad he caught me here, and oh yeah, I'm going to show him everything and do everything he says. Like, you've got to look at it from a cautious perspective. So what are things that Andy Agent could do in this situation to protect himself if this person does have a bad intention?
He could say, no, I'm not the only one here. My broker's here. He just stepped out. He should be back any minute.
Yep, he could totally do that. Yep, somebody else is here. Yeah, or you know, my ride is almost here, but yeah, I like that even better, that somebody is here, they just stepped out, they'll be right back. That's great. What else? I mean, he could not show it if he's concerned. He could say, I'm sorry, I'm running late for another appointment. Let me get your information and I'll give you a call and we can come back and meet. So that would be another thing if you really feel like you don't want to show this person something because you're concerned. So making an excuse, right? He could say, what would you like to know about the master bedroom? Because the guy's like, oh, can we go to the back of the house? It's like, well, what interests you about the back of, right? He could kind of try to get more information from the person. Anything else you guys see on that?
Well, I really like the idea of using that form in the booklet before showing the property to anyone. Because if they're not comfortable filling that out, then that's a big red flag too.
Huge. Yeah, actually, that's so great. Yeah, great. Let me go ahead and give you this form. So before we show the property, you've got to complete this and see what they say and how they react. That's a great idea. Okay, so your page 37. You have prior to an open house, and it actually goes through. You have prior to an open house, during an open house. You've got some great stuff in here. So prior to an open house, one of the things that it mentions on page 37 is meet the neighbors, which I love this, right? Before the open, let the neighbors know. By the way, you're also meeting neighbors, which is pretty cool. And you might meet another owner of a property next door that might consider selling their house or wants to know more about the property that's listed. So let them know if you're holding it and when you're going to be there, so that maybe they can look, you know, if there's like kind of like neighborhood watch, you know, keep a watchful eye. And then it gives you a little script here, by the way, too, that you can follow with talking to the neighbor, which I think is really good. It says think safety during the setup. So we talked before about bells, like on your office door, if you're working alone. You can add stuff like this, you guys, to your open houses. You can add a bell or something that's going to give you an indication of sound, because sometimes you do get startled, right? You might be in an open house, or you might be getting the property ready, and you might be in the bathroom and doing something, whatever. I don't know. Okay, not in a bathroom, but some other room, getting stuff clean and ready. Terry's like, it happens. And then, and somebody startles you, or they come in early, you just put your sign out, right? And you're not supposed to start your open house for 10 minutes. So put a bell on the door, like a temporary bell or something that's going to let you know when somebody walks in. I think that's really smart. Open all the window coverings so you can see clearly all around the property and that people can see inside, which is another reason you turn lights on, even if it's, and this is something agents don't do sometimes, even if it's like bright outside and you have good lighting in the property, still good to turn the lights on. Any addition to adding where people can see into the property is helpful. It says arrange a police officer check on page 38. Some police departments, it says, will send a squad car to drive by during your open house hours. I had never heard of that before I saw this. So, you know, hey, I don't know. That's something you can find out if they'll do. And then consider your client safety. So walk through the house with the client, bring attention to any high value items. So again, we tell our clients, lock up your stuff, your valuables, medication. Don't encourage people to take things or steal things, which is some of what people have done before that I've heard over here and in a lot of other areas. So removing key valuables from the home. In that way, if somebody does come in to try to steal things, they're not there. Okay, so it talks about secure your valuables, use a sign-in sheet or this kind of info form. It's always great. And you can, you know, people don't want to fill out the sign-in sheet. You can decide, you guys. I mean, it's a security feature and it's a security consideration. And I think people, especially with some of the insanity like that's going on, it'd be like, you know, I think people should not object to filling out a sign-in sheet. And if they do, it's a red flag. And if they do, even if it's not a red flag and they're a normal person and they don't mean to do you harm, you got to decide if you still want to move forward with showing them the property or not. So there's some good scripts around getting people to sign a sign-in sheet, because I know sometimes that's a challenge for agents. And then just stay alert, keep your backs to the walls, right? Be aware of what's going on around you. Never let anybody get behind you. And then keep a watchful eye. Okay, if there's only a couple people in the house, maybe look, you know, what do they look like? You just take note of their appearance. You can even take pictures of license plates if you want, which it talks about. And then watch for late visitors. So it says the highest point of sale for open houses is the last 45 minutes. So that was kind of a situation that we just talked about, right? Where somebody comes in at the last minute. Super common, right? Super common that people will come in at the last minute. So it gives you a script for that. Lock yourself in once the last person leaves while you lock up the rest of the house so that you don't get startled again. Check all the rooms. You never want to assume. I mean, this is another one. It's really important to be aware before you leave your house. Before you leave the house, that nobody else is in there. I mean, it may sound weird, probably not to my husband, but I actually do check. If I'm the only one in the house, I actually, when I get home, when I get home at night, I check the house first and make sure nobody's in there anywhere. I always do it. When I leave the house, I typically do it too, but always when I get home. So I like the idea of checking, especially if you've had people in the property, make sure nobody's still there, nobody hid that you missed. And be prepared with, you know, potentially a weapon in hand, like a flashlight, or we'll talk about that. and then checking your doors and windows just to make sure it's completely secure. And then you have a checklist here on the open house safety checklist. Sorry, I haven't checked the chat box in a while. Let me see if there's anything in there. No, it looks like. Okay, so we were talking about, yeah, recommend to Uber it. Sorry, I missed that, you guys. And we were talking before. Maybe he can tell the scheduled appointment at a later date. Okay, we talked about that. So you have your checklist here, page 41, and then page 42. So, okay, so let's recap some of this and what safety strategies can you guys implement immediately that you're not implementing now? Let's talk about what we just went over.
I'm going to use that form for all my open houses and not let anyone into the open house until they filled out the form and are wearing masks and gloves that I've provided.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you. What else?
So just as a weird thought, when it comes to the new protocols, I mean, if somebody walks in with a mask, you're not going to really know what they look like. So if anything happens, you really don't have a good description.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, one thing you can do, Tim, I think, especially if there's cameras, or you have a camera at your open house or something, you could ask them. I mean, just like they do at TSA. So I flew for the first time.
Photo ID.
What's that, Carol?
Photo ID.
So photo ID is good if you need to verify it's that person. So when I went through TSA, just a heads up, they had me remove my mask for a second to see who I was. Now you may, depending on the proximity of the person, I mean, you could do it at 6 feet or whatever you're comfortable with, where you just say, hey, can you remove it for a second? Or, I mean, you just have to do it if that's a consideration.
The
right?
bank requires it also.
The bank has you do it too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you're right, Tim. Some of those masks cover, you know, it's tough sometimes to recognize people or to be able to identify them, especially if you have other protocols or cameras. So yeah, good point for today. Okay, so I am going to jump. I want to mention, because I want to make sure I mentioned this at the beginning, that I might skip ahead on a couple of things, including the sexual harassment section for this. Not that it's not important, it's super important. I just want, you know, you guys, you have it in your booklet. I'm just concerned about time, so I want to make sure we get through the rest of this stuff and let Ermin kind of go through the practical self-defense stuff. And then at the end, we'll kind of recap what's training resources. And if we have time to go back to just the few pages on sexual harassment, we will. But I'm going to skip ahead of that for the moment. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in Ermin to go through the other handout that you guys got. You should have gotten this via email. If you didn't, Dylan, maybe you can upload this, the practical self-defense for real estate professionals. This is the one we're going to go through now.
It's uploaded and it was emailed this with the other ones. If you have the other ones, probably.
Okay, great. So it's uploaded in the chat box?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, so this section was another class that we had done, and I asked Ermin to come in and just kind of, it's so weird to call you that because I don't call him that, but anyway, to, his name though, to come in and talk about the things that he did in the training and iterate a lot of what we've said and add some really cool stuff to that that's important. So he, just a little bit of his background, he's a 3rd degree in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, black belt, 3rd degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 46 years of martial arts training, judo, aikido, kickboxing, karate, and weapons defense. He's a graduate of the Tim Kennedy Sheepdog Response Program, which is a program where civilians are trained in the skills required to overcome extreme life-threatening circumstances, which include things like situational awareness training, predatory stuff like, you know, defense, and it's all the stuff that is going to help you guys on your level to be able to identify some of these things. So go ahead, you're up, Ermin, take it away.
Hi guys, Ermin here. So I'm going to read a few things off the handout, Practical Self-Defense for Real Estate Professionals, that you guys should get a copy of. And we've covered a lot of it, but I'm going to go into kind of my take on things. And the first line is, what is the single best technique for surviving a violent encounter? And my answer to my students in that case is to not be there. And, you know, I'm kind of old now, and I've been through a lot of different encounters throughout my entire lifetime. I've been training in martial arts since I was a child, and extremely well versed. And I have been through such situations where I've had to defend myself and others, even against groups of people, people on meth, people with weapons, and I've been very successful. But I find out as time goes on, that just stopped happening. I'm never there when something bad happens. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that I've changed my behaviors to not put myself in situations where you need to be involved with self-defense. So having a mindset of situational awareness and self-defense, self-preservation will keep you out of those situations. One of the last things they talked about, someone showing up at a last minute and wanting to, giving their list of demands, what they want to do and what they want to see, is such a huge red flag. It just makes me laugh hearing it, But for someone else, it might not be as much of a red flag. But over years and years, I've become extremely aware of people's behaviors. Also, the behaviors of a sociopath. We all know them. They're not all criminals. Some of them are just coworkers that are really good at manipulating everyone so they get their way and everything's the easiest for them and more difficult for everyone else. That's one of them, People who want to get to the front of a line somewhere or use their smooth talking excuses. Very good at getting their way. They've done it their entire life, and they're extremely well practiced at it. They're very persistent at it. Criminals who are sociopaths are also the same way, and they're very skilled at getting their way. When you hear about so many of these horrible criminals that have just done mass crimes against humanity, and you hear people talk about how charming and how manipulating they were and how easily you got along with them, that's just the nature of a sociopath. So being aware of that in a showing situation is extremely important, recognizing that. Not to be manipulated by anyone for any reason, okay? So always try and even the playing field in your favor, okay? So starting off with our list, pre-event surveillance. If you really want to get into it, Google Earth, there's crime maps, sex offender database, examining properties from a defensive perspective. Okay, like I said, try and get into the mind of a criminal and be aware of what makes an easy crime location, all right? When you first check out any property, one of the reasons to be there before anyone else, not to drive together with them, especially if you're unfamiliar with them or unfamiliar with the property, is so you can do a walkthrough, walk around the entire property and familiarize yourself with it. Talk to neighbors if you can, if the situation presents itself. Makes you a better salesperson, and it makes presentation to your client easier. Oh, I talked to a neighbor, a nice gentleman next door. He's a retired police officer, yada, yada. Then someone knows that the neighbor is there, okay? That's not always, situation doesn't always present itself, but it's a great position to be in. And to get a basic demographic profile of an ideal buyer for this house, an ideal house for this buyer, okay? So it tells you if it's the kind of neighborhood that this kind of person really wants. It makes you a better salesperson, and it makes it easier for you to identify outliers. Outliers are things that seem out of place, okay? And situational awareness, we're always looking for outliers, things that don't fit in, don't seem right, okay? And you got to use your own judgment on that. And, it'll take a long time to get into a lot of details about it. But, if something doesn't seem right about the entire setup, then, you got to be aware of that. What you do is you can't just run out screaming, but you have to turn your creep alarm on, and be a little more aware, okay? As we said, fill out a form at an open house, set up a check-in table. Everyone signs in, no exceptions. There should be no exception to that. You should have information on your client with the picture ID before you start doing any business with them. If they're uncomfortable with that, there's a reason for it, Okay, and most times it's not because they're worried about invasion of their privacy. They want to come to you to help them find a home. They want you to know them and them to know you. Okay, that should be a no-brainer. Okay, what I always look for when someone signs in, personally, because I'm well trained, I always notice if someone's right or left-handed, and that just gets into being able to predict offensive behaviors. Okay, and if you get a lot more into self-defense training, you understand what that means, but it's just one of my own notes. Engage your customers, ask lots of questions. Questions are great for a sale, and they also get your client to talk about themselves. Ask them questions, let them talk. It's always helpful for you, okay? And if they don't have good answers for, what kind of neighborhood you're looking for, what do you like about this house in particular, what side of the yard you're looking for, what your reasons are for that. If they're not comfortable answering those questions, once again, red flag, okay? Profiling. Profiling is something you do not to be prejudiced, but just for your own awareness, okay? You can read that, see what you think about it. And then you perform a pre-showing route. So you get there before someone else, you walk around the place, the first thing you look for is dangerous choke points, dead ends, areas you can get trapped, like, going along the side of the house where there's no exit along that side. It's fenced off, narrow place, maybe hedges, hard to see in. That's someplace to be aware of, okay? Somewhere you don't want to walk in first and have someone follow you into it, okay? So prearrange a showing route, allow your clients to go ahead of you all the time after you, sir. Check this out. With social distancing, it's even easier to do that. Keeping your distance, not letting yourself get cornered in a small space behind someone. Have them go in and look, follow in behind them at a safe distance, okay? And we'll get a little bit more into it, but always have your flashlight in your hand, okay? We're gonna tell you a little bit more about the flashlights in a little bit. Always practice situational awareness, not at the last minute, not while you're there and realizing, oh shoot, I should have thought about this before. Maybe this is not a good spot to be in. If you practice it all the time, even off the job, it becomes a habit. It becomes really easy to see. I see things without even thinking about it. Even the back of my head, I see it, And it's because I've been practicing it my whole life. Body language is very important. Always watch people's body language, their positioning, how they're standing around you. If you move off to the side to let them get ahead of you, go ahead into a room or into an area of the yard, and immediately you see they shift as you shift. Sometimes that's an accident. It's like, oh no, sorry, after you, you go first. Sometimes, if it's followed by awkward silence, be ready. Okay, so always read people's body language. The eyes are the window to the soul, but the hands are the window to the intent. So keep an eye on people's hands, okay? Hands in their pocket while in position to block you from escape, always a bad indicator, okay? Be aware of that. Pre-attack indicators are a stance, making the body seem larger, okay? Stalling at funnels and dead ends. Shifting eyes is looking around just before someone does any kind of attack. 99% of the time, they look around to see if anyone's going to see them doing what they're about to do. Be aware of that, especially at a spot where, where bodily harm could be likely. All right. Always watching for pre-attack indicators. The other one is changing demeanor. If someone's talking along, even sociopaths do it. They're smooth talking, friendly, chatty, kind. All of a sudden, their demeanor changes. They go quiet for a minute. They get a stoic look on their face. Be aware, okay? You don't need to be paranoid and imagining that that's happening, but just be aware of that. There's always a change in demeanor before an attack occurs. There's almost always a checking for witnesses. Those are things to be aware of, okay? And then you got to look at what their motive is, okay? There's a lot of different scenarios you could get yourself into, from just an upset client who's just not really a nice person, wants to be argumentative. It could escalate into something worse. Is it a stalker? is it a robbery situation, a rape situation, or bodily harm or murder situation? They're all different. So as someone escalates any situation with you that's getting uncomfortable, try and be aware of what their intent is. Okay, like I said, you know, if it's just a drunk neighbor, doesn't like people selling all the INA, whatever, you know, selling all the land away. Okay, you deal with that a little bit differently. Okay, it's a mentally ill person, and of course, always keep yourself safe, but be aware of that. Drug induced. The most important thing is to, if it's not one of those things, if it's someone intent and premeditated on criminal behavior, that's when it becomes life or death for you. Okay. Never ever, under any circumstance, once things have gotten out of control, allow yourself to be taken to a second location. Nothing good ever happens from that. That's when it's time to fight for your life. Okay. If you're aware of dead ends, choke points, you're you know, you don't get cornered on the property, in a bedroom, in a bathroom, okay, where someone can harm you. You stay in the clear, you keep them ahead of you all the time, and someone wants to do something wrong, they're going to try and grab you and take you somewhere else, and that's where you have to fight for your life, okay, because you literally are at that point. Okay. Fight at all costs. I don't want to scare everybody, but if you do a lot of this, you avoid the entire situation happening. Okay. Now I'm getting up to everyday carry items, easily accessible to aid in self-defense. And my number one item, the small handheld tactical flashlight. This thing is extremely, extremely effective at keeping someone disoriented and able to reach out, grab at you, strike at you accurately, or even take a weapon or knife at you accurately. Very effective. I'll have Lisa practice and shine a light in my eyes while I try and poke at her with a stick. It's almost impossible. Okay. Good tactical flashlights are not very big. This is a smaller end, smaller size you should be looking for. When you keep it in your hand, it's just got about an inch or more. This is 4 inches, 4 to 6 inches is the best. 5 inches is my favorite. Okay. You want a flashlight that has at least 1,000 lumens of light power, light output. Okay. 1,000 lumens should be your minimum point you're looking for. They're easily found for sale, tactical flashlights. You can look on Amazon. You can look in any sporting goods stores and whatnot, have them. They got some nice ones down at Air Gas Hawaii over here on Maui. But mostly you can just look on Amazon. Look for a decent one. Don't look for the cheapest Chinese ones that are 3 for $20. They fall apart pretty quick. Okay, look for an American made. The best ones range from 60 to 120 bucks, but it is an extremely good tool. Top edge bezel is what's called crenulated. Okay, that means it's got little ridges on it, and those ridges are made for striking. So you always hold the flashlight in your hand like so, thumb it on and off, and with this you can strike down really easily and intuitively at anyone reaching out with you with any kind of a weapon. Now, some folks might
spell crenulated. What did you say it's called?
crenulated.
C-R-E-N-ulated.
Yeah, see this bezel edge is kind of slightly sharpened and ridged.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's called crenulated. Okay. Now, some people might think, okay, I'll get a bigger one then. This is even better. Okay, you can hit someone harder with this, but it's much, much, much slower, a lot easier to take away from you, and you're not likely going to have this hanging from your pocket. A small light is something you keep with you every day, everywhere, in your car. A couple months ago, I was driving along. There was a massive accident ahead of me. Drunk driver crossed the lane, slammed into some tourists. I hopped out. I always have several flashlights handy. I got them out. I used to help on the scene. They're very, very bright. Light up. Check for bleeding of the people that were injured in the accident. and help direct traffic, clear some debris off the roadway. I handed one off to another person who was helping out. And when the police and fire department arrived, they thanked me so much for being able to help out. It's just such a great thing to have. Very powerful flashlight. It's really easy to strike down with and hit someone in the hand who's reaching out towards you. Okay, very effective. Someone's hands get close to you, get around you, you can strike in the face with it. Very, very, very painful and blinding. So this is the simplest tool that anyone can use, anyone can buy. It's legal everywhere. You can take it on the airplane with you, carry on, no problem. TSA, as long as you don't have very sharp points on the bezel. See, these are kind of leveled off, but they're still sharp on edge, but they're not points. Okay, so
And
flashlight.
you can carry that around while you're showing the property. I mean, you can just carry
You should have this on you all the time, not even in your purse, ladies. If you're going around behind, looking underneath the house, into smaller areas, you can keep it on your wrists, already on a lanyard, just to help people check down inside here. This is where to keep the lawnmowers underneath the house as you stand back, as you go into rooms to show the way. If you don't want it on your hand because you have, you're taking notes, notepad, pen and paper or whatever, there's pocket clips on them. You clip it onto strap it onto your pocket or pants, belt clip, and you can pull it off real easily and use it instantly, okay? And it has very little danger of it being used against you, okay? Pepper spray, you can't keep it in your hand while you're showing someone, hey, look at the house back here. I got my pepper spray out aimed at your face, right? This is more innocuous, okay? This is more acceptable and very, very functional. If you got into a bad situation, I'm not against pepper spray or other forms of self-defense, but if it's in your purse or somewhere where you got to get it out, you got to turn the safety clip off, turn it, face it, shoot it at someone. You better hope that they're taking their time to attack you, okay? Because you can't access it right away with surprise. And criminals use the element of surprise all the time, okay? They don't give you, once in a while in the movies, the bad guy stalking you slowly, telling you what he's going to do to you and everything, but that's not very typical, okay? So this is my favorite everyday self-defense item. Other great ones to have is personal alarms. Someone talked about it on their cell phone. They also make little personal alarms that with a lanyard, you just clip it onto your belt or anywhere else, and you just give it a sharp tug, and it'll set off a loud piercing alarm. Okay, and that's great for self-defense. That'll keep, unless you're in a really remote location, then that's not going to help you as much. Okay, but anywhere where there's neighbors around, that'll bring attention to the situation. Okay, I like pocket knives. I carry pocket knives all the time. I'm very trained and very good at using them. Okay, if you're not very good, very trained, you can still keep one handy and use it for cutting cheese when you need to and for opening boxes, whatever else. But, as a self-defender, if you intend on using pocket knife, get training in. And last but not least, one of my favorites, not legal to bring on a job in Hawaii, but in other areas of the country, firearms. I'm a very strong supporter of the right to use firearms for self-defense. Okay, it doesn't make me a gun nut or anything else. I'm just a strong self-defender. And then if you're in a state where you can have an EDC, you got a carry license for firearm, obviously. If you're trained in it, it is the ultimate equalizer. Okay, but most times in Hawaii, it doesn't come into place. Okay.
So Terry was asking the name of the store. You said you can get the flashlight. Did you say it was Airgas Pro or?
Yes, Airgas Hawaii.
Airgas Hawaii.
They got some good tactical flashlights there. They have different ones in and out of stock there.
Okay. Yeah, I think I got mine on Amazon.
Yeah, it's really easy to get on Amazon or eBay or whatever. Just look for a good, decent quality one. And we're not going to get into the hand-to-hand tactics because that takes, training in place. But does anyone have any questions for me on any of these topics?
Lucy says, love the tactic flashlight.
Yeah, it's excellent. We had a class with, I don't know, what was there, about 20 realtors came to our school.
Yeah.
That hand-to-hand training class we had.
Yeah.
And we gave everyone, 3, 4 of them at a time, a handheld tactical flashlight, showed them how to hold it, how to use to stop someone coming at you. And I took a gloved hand on a stick with a actual metal knife that wasn't sharp on it. And we tried to stab everyone. Everyone was able to slam that thing out of people's hands with that flashlight. It's such an easy, intuitive thing to do. You can strike so easily down with the palm of your fist and strike at something. So it's a really good self-defense tool.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? If you do, put them in the chat box or go ahead and ask. I am going to go back to the PowerPoint and then just do the wrap up stuff. And then if you guys, if we have time and you want to go back to the few pages on sexual harassment, we can do that as well. So actually we can just go do that because we have about 15 minutes left. So we have enough time. So why don't we go back? Let's just go back to the PowerPoint and your page in your book on page 43. Which, and I'm going to share, I'm going to go back to the, hang on, I'm looking for it on the thing, page 43. Okay, here we go. So page 44. So we're going to just do a little scenario here and talk a little bit about sexual harassment. Let me share my screen. Okay, you guys can see that okay? Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So page 44, Angela Agent just listed a home for a client. Thank you, by the way, Ermin, and you can stay on in case you have other stuff you want to add. Angela Agent just listed a home for a client she seems to have a good rapport with. About a week in, she receives a late night text from her client that reads, "Hey, how are you doing? What are you up to?" She ignores them as they are clearly not about business. She gets similar texts from the client 2 nights later. So what should Angela Agent do in this instance? What do you think? Late night texts from clients that are not real estate related.
Have a conversation and set limits.
Totally. Yep. Like, hey, you know, let's stick to business. Let's talk about the property, maybe not so late, or time frames. I'd like to maintain a professional relationship.
Another tactic is to just not respond until business hours and address it during normal business hours.
Yeah.
Set the boundary.
Yep. You could wait till the next day and respond. You could, if the person makes you really uncomfortable, you could refer them to another agent. You know, maybe you just don't want to work with them. I mean, you could let the agent know the situation, but it may not be the same situation with that person. You know, you could talk to your broker, let somebody know what's going on so they can be aware and potentially guide you and help you. Those are all good. Chat box. Text them back. Anything outside of real estate business is not acceptable. Yep, totally. Okay, good, you guys. So next, page 45. Alexander Agent has always had a good working relationship with Amber, another agent in the office. Lately, he has noticed that her hugs, hello, are starting to linger. He is getting uncomfortable and starts to avoid her when he's in the office. What should Alexander Agent do in this instance?
He should let her know that that makes him feel uncomfortable.
Totally. That would be number one for sure. And then we definitely have a policy, a conduct policy in our office. And so it would be going to your leadership too. Again, if it's something that continues or after you've tried to resolve it with a person, then that would be something that may need to be brought up with leadership. Right? You should always feel comfortable to go to leadership with a concern. Okay, and people have different degrees of what's acceptable or not, but usually I mean, if it's making you uncomfortable, then you maybe need to have a conversation about it, okay? Because people do have different forms of what they feel is acceptable or not. Page 46. Says recognizing sexual harassment. So kind of what we're talking about. Unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature constitutes sexual harassment when this conduct explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Okay, because there's harassment in general, and then there's sexual harassment, which harassment in general is also a potential issue. So it can be unwelcome advances, requests for favors, verbal or physical conduct. It can be obvious or subtle. So it's important to note that harassers don't have to be in a position of power in order to harass someone. They can be, you know, a coworker, anybody, right? So, however, it does mention, which I think is important, they put in here what is not covered under sexual harassment laws. So according to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, sexual harassment is not simple teasing, offhand comments, right, or isolated incidents that are not serious. I mean, again, that can be relative. So if you're not sure, or if you know, it's open communication with the person and then having a conversation with leadership or brokers, managers. Page 47, real world examples may include, and let me just check my slides here. Okay, may include receiving explicit photos via text or email from someone on a regular basis, being required to perform a sexual favor in order to access information required to do your job, verbal abuse, obscene jokes, getting consistent comments about your body, unwanted physical contact. Anything else that we're missing, you guys?
You can then follow up and put that in writing, just a quick email or text message, just to let them know, you know, you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, good idea. Anna, just document it and say, hey, you know, have a conversation with them, and then just like you do in real estate, after our conversation, you know, I just wanted to make sure that this was clear, and I think that's a great idea in case it's something else.
I think something to be aware of too. Sexual harassment can start in the form of no touch, no talk, no text, just body language, looks, gestures, smiles, smirks, tipping your head when someone's leaning over next to you. Things like that can be, you know, red flags right away for sexual harassment.
So be aware of that. Be aware of those kinds of behaviors. So reporting it, if you believe you've been harassed, file a report with, you know, your office leadership as soon as possible. If someone is leadership and they're an alleged harasser, then you have to go above them, right? So who would be the person above them? In our company, it would be a regional leadership, or potentially the operating principal or regional leadership. And if someone in that, if it's that person, then you're going to go to the company, right? You're going to go to the HR department. So just that's the reporting. It should include the facts about the incident, the names of the individuals involved, and we must report any incident of harassment to the owner of the office. That's required. And then an investigation can be conducted once the report's been made, and then a determination is made and communicated to those involved. And we do not tolerate sexual harassment really of any kind. So safety in general is a priority. Okay, so the last part of your booklet has these great additional resources. So there's some training resources that you have in here of other classes. There's an NAR training. There is stuff online that you can get for more information, which are really good. So take a look at that. And then you also have in the back of this, which starts on your page 57, I think it is. Yeah, 57. You have your appendix, which has the office safety checklist, the customer identification form, which is also in your booklet, the safety checklist and the showing checklist, open house checklist. So it's all in one place there, which is really good. So you can just take that out and start using it in your business. So remember at the beginning of the training, we go to your page 54 in your booklet, And at the very beginning, we talked about some things inside the office and outside the office that maybe make you feel unsafe. So knowing what you know now, based on what we talked about today, what can you do to safeguard the situations that you mentioned, and what is it that you're going to implement? And then I'd love to hear your top takeaways from today as well before we go. So tell me what you're going to implement that was back on your sheet at the beginning, and also what your takeaways are.
Kind of like that comment from, I think it was Lynette, about getting on the phone when your client arrives, just to say, okay, Lisa, my client is here, and so I've got to go, but I'll call you after I'm done with the showing. Or, I mean, that seemed like a really just positive way to do it too.
Yeah, Lavette, that was a great one. That was a great one. That was one of my takeaways as well. Thank you, Anna. What else?
I think it might be beneficial for those quick at night pop-ins of the office to have maybe some motion sensitive lighting within the office. So then you don't have to worry about turning on the lights, they just pop on.
Yeah, motion sensors, that's great. It's a great idea.
I'm going to hire Ermin as a personal bodyguard. Is that a takeaway? Okay.
Okay, cool. Cool, Dylan. Me too.
All right.
You could hire me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we just have a meeting.
Yeah. You get us both. Okay, one more.
I like the idea of just really making sure that every client fills out the form and you get a copy of their photo ID and the flashlight.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Lisa, you said that you've been doing classes with Ermin. I'm wondering if we could get more information about classes, if group classes are available, how we too could possibly do, self-defense training.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Yeah, I can let you guys know. We, I mean, right now, obviously we're limited with the social distancing stuff still in place. However, we do intend to do a part 2 to this, which would be going through some of those practical self-defense things. That would definitely be the first thing to do. And then if you want to do any kind of self-defense training, I mean, we're going to highly recommend Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is that, grappling, ground fighting as far as a practical martial art. Some people do stand-up stuff too, but the majority, if you're in some kind of a physical altercation, it's typically going to go to the ground, not always. But self-defense is also, the first step to that. I mean, Ermin, I don't know, what would you suggest people do?
Yeah, and first of all, anytime you put together a group of people, I'll be there to train. We've always been that way. We've done it for realtors in the past. Most times, unfortunately, it's after someone gets hurt and everyone wants to train, but yeah, talk amongst the group, get together some people. We'll do trainings anytime you guys want. We can do a lot of practical training, hands-on, like what we talked about, even with COVID distancing, because a lot of it is education. And then we can do things like practicing with a flashlight, with a stick coming at you and whatnot. There's things we can do with the COVID situation. And of course, without that, we can do a lot more in hand-to-hand. But a lot of my training, 90% of it, is identifying body posture, positioning yourself to not be able to be attacked easily. And when you do that, when someone reacts by repositioning their self to be able to attack you, that's your indicator. That's a immediate red flag right there. So we can train you all those things. So anytime somebody wants to train, let us know. If you want to train in striking or jiu-jitsu, we have a great school. There's other ones, all around that we recommend too. If you decide to go somewhere, you're not near us, we can tell you who the people are that we trust. And I can just say for myself, which is different from anyone else in Hawaii that I know of, we're very tactically realistic, self-defense based, but also combined with MMA style effective training. So anyway, we got that training available at our school. Hopefully within a month or two, we'll be able to get back to our complete normal training systems. But in the meantime, there's plenty we can do. We're still doing Muay Thai classes right now as well.
We'll put together one for our local office, and then we can, yeah, Jess, we can talk about Big Island. And then anybody on the mainland who's on the call, you guys have local, you know, go find somebody that does.
And I can give references to.
Or Ermin can give references. So I put his email in the chat box along with mine if you guys don't have it. So mine is lisa.financialnetwork@gmail.com and Ermin's is baseyardmarine@msn.com. So feel free to reach out if you're not somebody that's here with us. And great. So thanks so much, you guys, for joining us. Anything else you guys have, questions, comments? It's noon. I want to be respectful of your time. And that was actually perfect timing. We got through everything. So anything else you guys have?
I just want to say thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thank you guys for participating. And I love to see some people that aren't over here with us. And thank you guys for participating and being a part of, yeah, just being a part of this today and getting involved. And if you guys are in other offices and you want us to do a training like this for your office, we're happy to do it. So just let me know. I'm volunteering, Ermin, too.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be KW. It doesn't have to be students at my gym. Anybody's welcome for self-defense training anytime.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe and look through the booklet again and just make it your practice every day. So, all right, you guys, take care.
Thank you.
Okay.